recording. So here we are. Hello, Hank. Hello, Kate.
Hey, Julie.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Good. So we are live on Facebook now. So we're going to give Facebook just a minute or two to let everybody know that we're here and that we're live. Hank, it's so great to have you back again. We've hosted you for your books. You've hosted some of our authors. So welcome back to Virtual Warwicks.
I love virtual Warwicks. I love real Warwicks too. And next time we should all be there in person. But I love the idea that we can still all be together. I haven't seen Kate for a while in real life, but we're best friends on Zoom now.
I love that. And I wanted to welcome Kate. This is the first time that we've had you at Warwick. So welcome to virtual. And like Hank said, we've got to get you into San Diego.
Oh, thanks so much, Julie. Great to finally be here.
Excellent. Hey, speaking of Kate, where are you calling in from today?
New York City, New York.
New York. And Hank, you are in Boston, correct?
I'm in Boston, yes, where it is a beautiful Boston fall day.
Oh.
Days where the leaves are just beginning to turn and the sky is that impossible blue. It's just gorgeous.
And I bet are people decorating for the fall their stoops, because that seems to be, Boston seems to do a really good job with that.
A lot of chrysanthemums and a lot of pumpkins and a lot of scarecrows. And then there's always the Halloween people who put 27,000 skeletons and spider webs and scary things that move in the night and those blowing ghosts, you know.
We had that in New York City the last few years, and I wonder why they're not stolen, all that stuff.
Who wants one of those blowing ghost things? You know, they're just creepy.
They're so creepy.
Do they not do it in California, Julie?
We don't really have stoops. I mean, our front doors, I mean, we kind of do, but it's not quite the same in the suburbs. You know, I mean, we have really kind of spread out houses. And so, I mean, everybody decorates, but there's something about the walk-ups and the stairs and that just looks so great that it just has I think it has just a little bit different kind of a feel. So, okay, real quick, just so that we get on with the show here, just real quick about Warwicks. Want to tell everybody that we are celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. We are located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. Yeah, thank you for the hand clapping on that. We're not the oldest bookstore in the country, but oldest continuously family owned. So Nancy Warwick is the 4th generation owner. So we're gonna be doing some fun stuff in November. If you're not on our email list, get on it. We're gonna have some contests, win some gift cards, some fun stuff like that. For tonight, Hank and Kate are gonna talk for about 35 minutes. I'm going to put Hank's book into the comment section so you can easily click on that and we can ship that to you. Or if you're in San Diego, we'd love you to come by the store and pick it up. And in that comment section too, we would love for you to put your questions in for Hank or for Kate. And I'll bring those in about that 35-minute mark. So don't be shy and ask a question. Those are always the good ones too. So with that, I'm going to introduce these two lovely ladies and we will get me off the screen and get on with the show. Hank Phillippi Ryan is the USA Today bestselling author of 13 novels of suspense. She has won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, including 5 Agathas, 4 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV and has won 37 Emmys. You'll see a few of them back there if you look at her bookshelf real close. 37 is incredible. 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. National book reviews have called Hank a master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. Hank's novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, New York Post, BookBub, Pop Sugar, Real Simple Magazine, and others. Her 2020 thriller is The First to Die. It garnered a starred review from Publishers Weekly, which is awesome, and is a nominee for the Anthony Award for Best Novel, and again, the iconic Mary Higgins Clark Award. Her newest book is Her Perfect Life. Do you have, there it is, a chilling psychological standalone about fame, family, and revenge. That cover is so great.
Isn't it?
Yes, it's awesome. It received starred reviews from Kirkus and Publishers Weekly, which called it a superlative thriller. Joining her today is Kate White. Kate is the New York Times bestselling author of 7 standalone psychological thrillers, including this year's The Fiancé and Have You Seen Me? There it is. Your covers go so well together. When we did our promo thing for it, I was loving the promo that we were able to do because the covers looked like they were meant to be together.
Absolutely.
As well as 8 Bailey Wagons mysteries, including Such a Perfect Wife in 2019, which was nominated for an International Thriller Writers Award. The former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine, Kate is also the editor of the Mystery Writers of America cookbook. But there's some good recipes in there. She divides her time between New York City and Las Flores, Uruguay. Welcome, ladies. Have a great conversation. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, Julie. Hank, congratulations on Her Perfect Life. Wow.
I mean, you just, the fiance came out, what, a month or so ago?
Hey, forget about that. We're not talking about that.
I was going to say, the launch jitters and the launch craziness and how, we work for a year to make the perfect book. And then there's the moment when people are actually going to read it. So right. I can tell you, and Julie, that it just went into a second printing after being on sale for just 2 weeks. So that's
oh my God. Well, that kind of actually brings up what I was going to ask you first. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to do a short summary of the book so that you can entice anyone who hasn't had the fabulous opportunity of reading it yet, like I have. But what I want to ask you first, this book really seems to be getting so much buzz, as your other books have too, but this is even more so. And I wondered what's going on? What do you think's happening with this one in particular?
Isn't that interesting? I have no idea whether it's timing, whether it's the subject matter, whether my publisher's press release said something about this is her most personal book of all, which is sort of scary. I never thought of it that way, but this book is sort of a very inside look at what it's like to be a television reporter. The main character is not me. We'll talk about that in a minute. Not me at all. So I wonder whether in the craziness of the pandemic, readers are just focusing on books more. Maybe we're talking about books more. Maybe you and I are hundreds of miles away, and Julie is thousands of miles away, and the people who are here with us this evening are from all over the world. And the pandemic has allowed us to be together and talk about books and have some discoverability. So, well, I wish I knew the answer to that. If I knew the answer to that, I would just try to do it again.
Model it, yeah. Well, tell us, give us a short wrap-up summary for those, as I said, who haven't read it yet. Seduce them with this fabulous plot.
It's been a long time since I seduced someone, I've got to tell you. It's interesting because it made me realize today, since it's in a second printing now, that the first editions, the ones, for instance, Warwick's has, will be in short supply. When those are gone, they're gone.
Grab them while you can.
No pressure, it's just my career on the line here. It's interesting because we both write psychological thrillers, and better than anyone how difficult it is to talk about a psychological thriller without giving much of it away. But there was a challenge on Twitter that said, can you describe your book in 5 words? So I thought, okay, that'll be easy. And
excellent.
That it wasn't so easy, because 5 words requires you to really come up with the essence of the book, to really figure out what it is you're trying to get to. And I came up with, in Her Perfect Life, sisters, betrayal, guilt, fame, and revenge. And that's really what the book is about. That, that raging, simmering feeling of revenge, and the power of guilt, and the bond of sisters, and the crazy spotlight of fame. So, and then there was a wonderful thing on Facebook that said, describe your book, and you think I'm on social media too much. Describe your book in 5 phrases. And that was hard too. That was a difficult challenge too. But I came up with a beloved reporter with a deep, dark secret, a missing college student, and that is not the secret, an anonymous source, a passionate clandestine weekend in Aspen, and a child's little pink suitcase that is surprisingly empty. So quickly, Her Perfect Life stars, I almost held up the fiance. Her Perfect Life stars Lily Atwood, who is a reporter so perfect and so beloved, television reporter, that her fans have hashtagged her Perfect Lily. And everybody knows Lily Atwood. And that may be her problem because Lily Atwood has fame, she has fortune, she has Emmys, she's the single mom to an adorable 7-year-old daughter, but she also has a deep, ugly secret. And she is afraid that if someone tells it, that's the end of her career and the end of her family and the end of Lily Atwood. And she begins to wonder, how can she keep a secret when she's always in the spotlight? And she realizes that the spotlight is the most dangerous place of all. So two smart women facing off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to prove their truth about a devastating betrayal. But which woman is the cat and which woman is the mouse, right? Which woman is the cat and which woman is the mouse?
Oh, I love that. Hank, you, as Julie said, you're an investigative reporter. You've been in television journalism for years. And I think I'm right in that the 13 books you've written, most of them or all of them involve that world. At least I've read, I think, most of them. But in this book, you touch on a couple of aspects of television journalism that are really fascinated, and perhaps you touch on them in more depth than you have in some of the other books. And one of them, and you hinted at this with Lily, is the need to be perfect. And I'd love to ask, since this is your most personal book, perhaps, how that's played into your life. And can I just say, in knowing you for close to 15 years, I've never seen a hair out of place. But also, how does that affect Lily? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and I think it's interesting because one of the things that I insist on talking about the fiance a little bit at least, although I know you keep stopping me, but I do think that one of the things that connects the two of us, I'm going like the two of us as if you can see me where I'm pointing, is that there is this thing about fame, and there is this thing about the spotlight, and there is this thing about perfection. And you were a magazine editor for years and years, and you know that this is what so many people are seeking. Sometimes to their destruction, and sometimes knowing that it's impossible. I mean, as a television reporter, I can tell you that the need for perfection in every way is paramount and critical. As a reporter, we'll just say me and let's say Lily, but talk about Lily. She can never make a mistake. A television reporter can never make a mistake. They can never call someone the wrong name. They can never choose the wrong word. They can never miscalculate. They can never misunderstand a statistic. They can never be 1 second late. And no matter what happens, they have to be camera ready during the whole thing. So if a light falls on me in a live shot, or if the sirens go off, or if the church bells chime, or if some crazy person starts going wacky in the background of my live shot, I'm there. Someone knows I'm there. And it really came from a personal situation where I mean, this vulnerability of the spotlight, we can talk about that in a minute, but you were talking about the perfection. So Lily, for instance, there's a scene when she's in a grocery store and she's with her little daughter. She's just grocery shopping. And a woman comes up to her and says, "Aren't you Lily Atwood? You know, I love you." And how weird is that, a stranger? And she says, "Oh, and this must be your little daughter." And how weird is that, a stranger? And then the woman says, "I've watched you all the time. Can I take a selfie with you and your daughter?" Now you're pushing. So
Right.
now Lily says, as any protective mom would say, "You can take a picture with me, but let's keep Rowan, my little Rowan, out of it." And the woman instantly is angry and says, "Oh, you television people, you know, you think you're better than all of us." And she's lost a fan, she's lost a viewer because she stood up for her child. So it's that juggle to always have to say the right thing, to always have to look right, to keep this image, no matter what is happening in your personal life, to keep this image personally and professionally is incredibly stressful. And as we all know by the incredibly ironic title, Her Perfect Life, it's impossible. It's impossible to do that. But Lily, as a television reporter, hashtag perfect Lily, imagine having that be what you have to live up to. It's having a harder and harder time doing that.
Another aspect of television journalism you touch on is reporters making enemies. And not, I would assume it isn't in your world, a worry isn't just making enemies of people who you report on who don't like what they say, but making enemies of colleagues who are jealous of you. And that's something Lily has to deal with too. Someone she thinks views her a certain way, but really doesn't, has that envy problem. Talk about that a little bit, will you? And how, just from a macro level in TV journalism, but also the micro level of the book.
Envy is a really interesting emotion because it's so creepy and so sinister and so incremental. I think there's a line in the book that says something like, approval is such a sister to envy. Because a person who's a colleague, her producer, Lily's producer, just for instance, her producer, a producer and reporter are a team. They work together and they both succeed or they both fail. So if they do a good story, yay, they both succeed. If they do a bad story or make a mistake, they both fail. So their careers depend on each other. But the reporter gets the spotlight. The reporter gets the public credit, and the producer is behind the scenes. So a good producer has to be happy with staying behind the scenes, of knowing that the quote talent gets the credit. And sometimes that's very hard. And sometimes someone in that kind of a position might think, oh, great job, Lily. And then the next moment might be thinking, I really did all the work, Lily. And then the next moment might be thinking, why do you get all the credit, Lily? And then the next moment is, I'm going to take the credit for this. And you see how you don't even know that you're dissolving, self-destructing into this ugly emotion. And yes, you're so right, Kate, that happens. It's competitive. Of course the world is competitive. You know this. The world is competitive and somebody wins and somebody loses.
Right. And even though I saw that certainly in the magazine world, I think in television it's more pronounced because the spotlight is so much bigger. You're out there for everybody to see. You touched on.
And to say about the spotlight, and you were going to ask about that, I think, is that, and in magazine world, everybody's sort of behind the scene except the big fancy writers, but the people who really put the magazine together, editors like you, I mean, you were very front and center and people knew who you were, but all the people who worked with you, people might not know them. So you have had a lot of experience with fame and a lot of personal experience with being in the spotlight. And this is sort of where this book came from as well, is that I was anchoring the weekend news in Atlanta. Speaking of the spotlight, I was anchoring the weekend news in Atlanta, and I was driving home one midnight-ish after the 11 o'clock news on Saturday. And I turned the corner onto my little street, Park Street in Atlanta, and it was full of police cars with blue lights flashing. And I thought, whoa, a crime scene. I wonder what's happened here. As I drove down the street, because I thought, okay, I can cover this story. But as I got closer, I realized that the police cars and the blue lights were at my house. It was at my house. And so I parked the car and leaped out of the car and ran to the police officer and said, hi, I'm Hank from Channel 2. And he said, yeah, I know who you are. And I said, well, that's my house. And he said, yeah, I know. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, someone broke into your house. We caught them. They're in the cruiser back there. And he told us that he broke into your house because he knew you were live on television. So he knew you were not home.
So scary.
So scary. He knew where I was, so he knew where I wasn't. And that was the moment, Kate, that I really understood the vulnerability of whatever fame is or whatever being a public figure means. I understood that. And so I took that and just amplified it for Lily. She's incredibly famous, way more famous than we'll ever be. And, she can't walk down the street without everybody knowing who she is. Imagine the pressure of that. So you talk about fame and you talk about perfection, and yet what is she really? She's a single mom, a single hardworking mom.
Yeah. And so vulnerable. Just to circle back to the producer, you did something really interesting with this book in that you told it from the perspective of three different women, right? Lily, her sister Cassie, and Greer, the producer. And I was thinking about this week because in New York this summer, we had a beautiful exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Alice Neal's paintings.
Uh-huh.
And this week I went downtown to a gallery where they had some of her early work, and she painted extraordinary pictures of people. And there was a quote from her where she said that sometimes she would go home at night and she could not get out of her mind the person she had been painting that day. The person just stayed with them. And I wondered, does that happen to you? Because you love to draw really incredible characters. In this book, you have these three women, all very different, all beautifully drawn. Did you find yourself thinking about them at the end of the day, not being able to get them out of your mind? And what did you do about that?
Oh, what a good question. What a sweet, lovely, thoughtful, writerly question. Thank you. Well, I don't know if you do this, and I'd love to hear, but when I'm writing a different character, if I'm writing Cassie or Greer or Lily, I sort of become that character as I'm writing, how they sit and how they think. I'm sure I have their expressions. If I'm writing Lily, I have very good posture. If I'm writing Cassie, I'm an 18-year-old, and I write what they see. I make my eyes be their eyes, and my brain be their brains, and my desires and needs and wants and fears and hopes be theirs. And it's very affecting. I had people email me saying at the end of the book that they were crying, and that's what you hope for, that your characters have touched people so much. And the only way that can happen is if they touch the author so much.
Right.
One of the things I wondered when I started writing fiction after all those years as a television reporter was whether I could make stuff up. Could I make it up? Right? The
Right.
is the same for you as a reporter. You're telling the truth about something. You're creating a truth you're creating a story of a truth that's real. But in fiction, we're creating a truth of a story that's fictional. It has to be just as true to the story.
Right. I love what you just said, because I was going to ask that part too, is how do you get in their headset? And that's great what you said. You just try to see it through their eyes. You get their mannerisms as you write, which then that brings me to a question that you are asked every single time you're interviewed, and I am too. But I want to include it because I think that there are always aspiring authors listening, just as I listen to, I went to bookstores to hear authors speak, and you want to know where the author gets his or her ideas. So tell us a little bit about that. William, where did this idea for Her Perfect Life spring from? To some degree, you've told us that, but in general, what's the process for you? What's your process?
It's interesting, isn't it? And I completely agree with you. I love to hear authors talk about that. And because it shows how different it is for each of us. How, I start with an idea, and then I try to figure out who could be the characters who create the story that's that idea.
Well, hold on a second though, but where do your ideas generally
Oh, golly, Sue Grafton used to call that the magic. I don't know. The universe the universe provides at some moment, and you've had this, you see something, or you hear a phrase, or your brain says, I wonder if this would be, or you think, what if I take one of my own experiences, for instance, in this particular book, when I started in television, which was 43 years ago, seriously, I was 26. I was in Indianapolis, my hometown, where I started out in television, and I was my first year as a reporter, and I was in the laundromat. That's how glamorous my life was, in the laundromat. And someone came up to me and said, "Aren't you Hank from Channel 13?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, well, I have a story for you, and let me tell you about my life." And I'm thinking, part of me is thinking, and this is where the book came from. Part of me is thinking, yeah, tell me. I'd love to hear a good story. Thank you. And part of me is thinking, I'm in the laundromat. I'm in the laundromat. So could I just do my, but of course of course I say, tell me the story, because that's my life. It might be Watergate, who knows, that they're about to tell me about. But when I finished, I got home and I called my mom and I said, Mom, I was whining, actually, I can admit to you. And I said, can you believe it, Mom? Somebody came up to me in the laundromat and they're asked, tell me their life story, and they want to tell me, something some news story that they want me to cover. And my mom paused on the phone and she says, Sweetheart, you chose the spotlight. Welcome to the spotlight. Welcome to the spotlight. And she said, and I never want to hear you complain again. So what, right? Right. And so what, because so I thought about this when it came to Lily. I thought Lily chose the spotlight, that she gets the deal. She made this deal with the universe and with her profession. This is what happens. But her daughter Rowan, her 7-year-old daughter Rowan, did not choose the
Did not,
spotlight.
right.
And how does a single mom deal with that?
Yeah.
And so it's like a Rubik's Cube where an idea comes from, isn't it? You take a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little
Right.
bit of this, and then they go and the cube goes together. And at some point, there's this jewel of a new idea. Every piece fits together perfectly, and then that's what makes the story. I mean,
And
where do you get your ideas?
I think it's similar to you where sometimes it has been a newspaper headline, but it might just be a phrase overheard in a hotel lobby. And then do you use it seems like such a cliche. You hear writers talk about it, but it works for me. Just to keep playing with the idea of what if, what if this happened? What if that happened? And do you find yourself doing that as well?
Sure, you have to. I mean, that's a story, isn't it? That's a story. What happens next and what happens next?
Right.
I say to myself, basically, what does someone want and how far will they go to get it? And then the next step in that is, so they want something and they're going after it and they hit an obstacle. What decision will they make when they hit that obstacle? Because that decision reveals their character. Do they do the right and honorable and good thing? Do they do underhanded, sneaky, manipulative, gaslighty thing? What do they do? And then once you take that, once that character makes the decision, and then they're keeping on their path to what they want, then there's another obstacle and another, knowing that every character is on their path of getting what they want. And what happens when those paths cross and clash? When everybody, only one person, just like in magazines and just like in television, only one person can win. And what do you do with that conflict? So that's sort of how my story writing brain goes. I don't have an outline. I have no idea. Do you? Do you have an outline for your stories?
Yeah, I do. I don't do so much an outline, but I always know the end and I know who the killer is. And then I generally plot out about 4 chapters at a time. You've been very much a teacher of the craft as well. And were you one of the people started Mystery Writers of America University? And you've also taught other places. What do you see as the biggest mistake aspiring authors make? And my guess is they don't do what you just talked about. Sometimes you have to make sure that hero or heroine on the journey keeps bumping up against obstacles. And sometimes I see aspiring authors not having it clear enough what is going to get in the way of that hero getting what he or she wants. What do you see as one of the biggest mistakes aspiring authors make?
Oh, I think that's really wise. I think what you said is exactly, people don't understand that a story is conflict, is action, is wanting, is desire, is clash. And I want you all to know that we're on a separate stream. And so when you're asking questions or talking on Facebook, Kate and I cannot see that. So we don't know who's here. And I will go back and look at the Facebook posts when this is over. But right now I'm not acknowledging you because I don't know who you are. It's a big mystery. It's a big mystery. But the other thing that I think that aspiring authors, I mean, an aspiring author, everybody is an aspiring author until they write, then they're an author, is motivation. One of the things that I learned in story meetings at Channel 7 is that every morning we would have a story pitch meeting, and we'd have to go in and pitch as a general assignment reporter to the big executive producers the story that we wanted to do. And we had one producer who was in charge of everything. And I'll tell you about her. Nobody will ever know who she is. But she would, I would pitch what I would say thought was a really good story. And she would say, why do I care about that? Why do I care? And it was, and it, she, I hear her voice in my head all the time now, because that's what authors sometimes miss is, why would I care about that?
Yeah.
Why would she care? Why, and even more, why would they do that? Why would
Yeah.
they do what they're doing? Why? So that caring and motivation, I think, is really paramount in writing as well. It has to, you have to make you have to make the audience care, make the
Yeah.
readers care.
That is such a good point. My first boss, when I started a glamour magazine out of college, and there was a legendary woman who was the editor there, and you would nervously bring up an idea at a meeting, and I would have this red tide coming up from my chest, like nervous blotches, and it would be rising up to the neck and then to the cheeks, and I looked someone probably thought of grabbing a fire extinguisher at times, seeing me in a meeting. But she would say this line, very similar to what your boss said: what's in it for the reader? And you just have to keep that in mind, right? Here's a question I've got for you. And we'll definitely take any questions. If anyone has any questions, we'd love to offer them to Hank to answer. So
and to you, Kate, and to you all, Kate, you don't want to miss the fiance.
Oh, Hank, stop.
Read this. I mean, again, no. Let me just quickly say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I know it's just super rude, but fame, and family and revenge. This is a glorious book about exactly the same topics in a completely different way. But only Kate White could have written this domestic suspense in a gorgeous setting with fabulous characters and wonderful food and gorgeous gardens, and really a surprising ending. So I'm surprised. I mean, I don't ever know the endings. I don't even know what the bad thing that happens is half the time, let alone who did the bad thing, or let alone who dies. I have no idea.
As you're writing, then
that comes to me as I'm writing, if I'm lucky, about 2/3 of the way through, if I'm lucky. I mean, that's where I am on my new book now.
And definitely 7/8 of the way through. It has to, right? Quick question before we bring Julie back with some questions from people who are listening. I'd love to know what your lessons as an author were from the pandemic. I had a really interesting thing happen to me in that I felt I'm going to do a really much better job on the book that's going to be out for 2022, because I have so much time to write that I'm not being distracted by having lunches with other authors or people I worked in the magazine business with. And though she's very happy with the book now, she probably asked for more changes than she's ever asked for. And it made me realize that maybe I had foggy head then. And yet when I handed it in, I thought it was spectacular. So I guess my takeaway from the pandemic has been, it's just important to sort of step back at some distance and see that some of the things we've thought during this period or believe about ourselves or whatever may need us to think about them a little bit more. And so that was a really interesting experience for me. What was there any takeaway for you as an author during this period?
Well, I'm interested to hear that from you, because I feel sometimes in writing the book now that I say to myself more than I ever do, which is always constant. I wonder if this is good. I wonder.
Right.
Or even, I wish I remembered how to write a book. I don't really know how to do this anymore. But I do remember that I was writing Her Perfect Life. I was 15,000 words into Her Perfect Life when the pandemic started, because I can show you exactly where in the book that was. And I was in Palm Beach at a readers event with 250 readers. And I was so happy previously that this event was going to happen. But as it got closer and closer, I really wish that they would cancel it, because I did not want to be.
Was this March or so?
March 12th, 2020. March 12th, 2020. And I hightailed it out of that event when it was over, and I went to the airport, which was where, I have to tell you, there was a woman in the waiting area who had a mask on. Not everybody had masks on then because people just didn't, it was too early. And this woman had a mask on, and she took off her mask, she pulled down her mask, and then she sneezed, and then she put the mask back on. And then I thought, I don't think so. Unclear on the concept. So I got on the plane and I flipped over my laptop because I always write on planes. I've finished so many books on JetBlue. It's crazy. I love it. And I couldn't write. I couldn't do it. I stared at those words and I thought, I will never be able to do this again. I've got to go home. I've got to be with my family. I've got to stockpile aluminum foil. I've got to try
Toilet paper.
I've got to watch the news. I can't do this. And after about 2 weeks of really not working on it, I would look at it and just think it was this gray blotches on white. I thought, wait a minute. I told myself, you chose to be an author of commercial fiction, of page-turning psychological thrillers, the kind that people escape into. And what better escape than a book? I need to be a storyteller, I told myself, now more than we ever have. This is what the world needs now more than we ever have. This is what I need to do, not only for me, but for the world. We all need to have stories. We all need to have escapes. And it went through my mind, it's always safe inside a book. It's always safe inside a book. And I thought, this is what I'm meant to do. And I really started writing again with sort of renewed inspiration as a result of it. I agree with you 1,000,000% that it is not the same. There's this veneer of weirdness still around everything, and it's much more difficult to focus. But I do believe in it more than anything. So did you fix it? Is it going to be fantastic?
Yes, fixed, thank God. And now Julie. Julie, are you there? I know we have some questions, right?
Yes, we do. I'm going to ask one before we get to the audience question, because this one's always fascinating to me too. So Hank, you write from 2 or 3 different perspectives. Your chapters are one person, the next person. Do you do that in the writing process, or do you write one character's story all the way through and then fill the other characters in?
I know authors who write one character story all the way through and then do another one and then sort of shuffle them together. My brain just explodes at the idea of that. I can't even imagine doing that. I mean, I guess I can imagine because my brain exploded. I just tell the story in the chronological order that it happened. It just here's what happens, and then here's what happens as a result of that, and then here's what the other person is thinking at the same time and doing it. Okay. The same. So I do them, whatever that word is that means.
Simultaneously, or it's sequentially, I guess, or whatever it is. Yeah. Yes. Because it's always interesting to me. It's always like, I wonder how they do this. Do they, play off of the, if one character is doing something, does that change what another might do?
Sure, it would have to, right? It would have to. Yep. What about you? How do you handle that?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, wait, there's another author. I always just write from one perspective. I've just never toyed with that, doing anything else with that.
But is that hard for you? Because I'm trying to do that and asking for a friend, because I'm trying to do this in my new book, just write from one point of view. And it has its own challenges, doesn't it? Because a person can only be in one place. So everything, they have to hear about things or be in the thing or have someone tell them the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But we know, as authors, Hank, everybody does it differently. Some people plot, some people go by the seat of their pants, and it's wonderful to see how many different ways there are to do it.
And that's what's so beautiful about it. And because I know a lot of people that write this, we're voracious readers that come in to watch authors talk, but there's aspiring writers out there too. And that I always tell them too, just from like the bookstore, there's not one right way to do any of this.
Right. Do what works for you.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to some audience questions. So Barbara, and she said she did put this in, Hank, when you guys were talking about being perfect. So it's kind of back to that part of the conversation. She says, hi to you. How have you held up under the pressure of being perfect for so many years?
I say she's done pretty well
She's
from the
done
look
pretty
of
well
her.
too, from
Yeah.
our perspective.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have clouded your mind. I have clouded your mind. Um, you know, just like my mom said, all those years ago, um, I work very hard. I work all the time. I don't have any plants that live, and I don't have any pets. And my husband is a criminal defense attorney, and we both work all the time. So I guess it's just my mind's metabolism is just to try to do the best that I can at every moment of everything that I do. Is that bad or destructive? It's just how I am. It's just I like to, when I was a general assignment reporter, doing all the kinds of stories that you have to do, fires and cat shows and the craft show and the basketball finals and the school committee meeting and all those kinds of things. I would just try to do the best cat show I could, the most wonderful people who work on Christmas story that better than anybody had ever seen, because that's what made it fun. I remember when I worked at, when I was in high school, I worked at a dime store at Murphy's 5 and 10 cent store. And I remember I worked in, okay, this is so crazy, but I worked in, and Kate, you will love this too. I worked in the hat department, And I remember thinking, everybody that comes into this hat department is going to leave so happy. I'm gonna help them find the hat that they love. And I think about that now. Now it's sort of Stephen Sondheim's making hats. Look, I made a hat. All right, it's all sort of. I just want people to be happy with what I do. I guess that's the result. So Barbara, fine. I'm the luckiest person in the world to have trained as a reporter, done good things as a reporter. And now I get to have this sort of second half of my life and career doing something additionally that I love. So a lot of that comes out of love. That's the real answer.
And I think that that's the thing, that if you don't want to do it, either we can call it perfect or to the best of your ability, then you shouldn't be doing it. It's one of those things where it's like, we all should be doing stuff that makes us happy. And it's and if that's just part of doing a good job,
I mean, I think the thing of television and the thing of also magazines, as Kate well knows, is that once something's on the air or in print, it's got to be right. And so, we become these people who are looking for every single thing that might be wrong every moment of the day. And that's a good thing for a thriller writer. I'll say to my husband when he goes out, I'll say, "Be careful." And he'll say, "Of what?" There are two ways. There are your two ways of looking at the world.
Yeah. And the pressures, like you said earlier in your conversation when you first started talking, I don't think people really understand when they're looking at news reporters and people on screen, just the pressure of just being that, like you said, perfect. I mean, and having to just be on, and, whatever's happening behind you, having the right answer and the right comment, not getting anything wrong. There's so much pressure to that. Okay. From Barbara said, "It's good to be who you are. I am one of your numerous fans. Thanks for always doing your best work." So there you go for Barbara. There you go. Thanks, Barbara. Okay. So from Margit, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Marjut, Margit, I guess. What achievement are you most proud of as an author, and what do you dream of?
Oh.
And Kate, I want you to answer that one too.
Yeah, I want to hear this too. Oh my golly, what am I most proud of? I'm most proud of finishing my first book, which won the Agatha for Best First Novel. That was great. I didn't know whether I could do it. And that was wonderful to have that accomplishment. I also remember being at a writers' convention, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and there was Sue Grafton with my book asking me to autograph my book for Sue Grafton. Thank goodness someone was there randomly and snapped a picture of how this joy on my face, of just joy and hilarity. Sue Grafton, my idol, was asking me for my autograph. So
great.
It's those moments, of, I was in the post office back in the before times, and someone came up to me and said, "Aren't you Hank Phillippi Ryan?" And I said, I thought she recognized me from television. And I said, oh, I said, yeah. And she said, I'm reading your book. And she pulled my book out of her purse. And it wasn't about television. It was about being an author. And that was pretty great as well. Margit, welcome. You're from Finland, right? There are millions of moments. There are millions of wonderful moments.
And then she wants to know, and what do you dream of?
What do I dream? I dream that my book, which is due October the 6th, will be finished on time. There's so many things to dream of. It's one of those things where I have learned in my advanced years that the things we hope for may not be the best things even, and there are wonderful things that we can't even imagine. So I'm sort of a let's see what happens today kind of person. Because there are many wonderful things. If you have a goal, then Kate and I could both list a million things that would be pretty great if they happen, and you all know them too. But the moment that my book is finished and the copy of it arrives in that gorgeous box, and you see these covers and you think, oh look, I did that.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
Hank, how long did it take you to write your first novel?
It took about a year and a half. Okay. My first draft, let me just put it this way, my first draft was 723 pages long. I had to cut 400 pages.
Wow.
That's how much of a newbie I was.
Yeah. Oh, but that's still, that's fantastic. So Kate, for you, what achievement are you most proud of as an author, and what do you dream of?
I think just being an author, it was something that I wanted to do when I was younger. When I was younger, I did a lot of different kinds of writing. I wrote a play that was put on in my high school. I put out a little magazine, and I didn't know that you couldn't do all of those things. And then finally, when I went to college, I realized you have to pick a lane, and I won this big magazine contest. So it sort of picked the lane for me. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, I'm probably not going to write fiction. And then pretty late in the game, I decided, even though I had this huge full-time job, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And so the fact that pretty late in the game, I did manage to do it. And I'm working on my 16th now, and just signing another contract with HarperCollins. So the fact that I sort of pulled that out of the hat, at a point where it almost eluded me, is what I'm most proud of. And I just would say to any aspiring authors, the great thing about this particular work is that there isn't this kind of ageism there is in other fields. So if you're toying with it, definitely let me give you a big round of applause. Go for it, but don't make the mistake. And I know Hank must know this from all the teaching she does. As my agent says, a lot of people think just because they were good as a lawyer or good as a nurse or doctor, they can do it. You have to think of it as a new craft you have to learn. And you've got to read, you've got to do writing workshops, you've got to take courses, and but it's doable. It is.
We're such a team, Kate. I didn't start writing till I was 55. So, I'm sort of, we're both and I had exactly the same thought. If I don't do this now, when am I going to do it? And I do.
You're not saying we're the Grandma Moses of us.
But Kate, go ahead. Sorry.
I think that the similarity is that we both had or have these careers that people would have said they're great. You can just stop.
That's enough. Yeah.
And we thought, yeah, but we have this other idea.
But I love that you both appreciated it as a craft that you had to learn and do. And that's what I think. Some people think that, that's just writing. And it's like, no, this is a craft.
You really write something, but I read a lot of people's manuscripts, and I'll say things like, and forgive me, but I have actually said to a person, have you ever read a book? Because and so there is the passion, there is the drive, there is the idea, there is even the talent, but then there's the work.
Right.
Which is actually part of the fun part. But that, I mean, I wrote a book that was 723 pages long. You know, that's not going to fly.
Well,
And
but
that
and
was
I
all
also think that, you know, you have to take the hubris out of it too. It's like you're going to expect somebody to not only pay money for this, to buy it, to read it. You're going to take up someone's 8, 10 hours. So, you know, I read faster than that. Some people don't, but you know, depending, it's like it's not just like watching a movie for an hour or two, you know. So it's time that somebody's going to invest in reading this, and it needs to be, like we talked about, maybe not perfect, but as good as it can be.
It's a lot longer than I think people think it will take.
Right. Okay, we're running out of time. Hank and Kate, this was so much fun. Kate, it was so wonderful meeting you. Hank, I can't wait to see you again. Tell us real quickly, Kate, if people want to follow you, do you have a favorite social media, or do you put them to your website?
Well, I'm definitely on Instagram, but I really communicate a lot with my readers on Facebook. I try to answer everybody there, and I love hearing from them. So, you know, Kate White Author on Facebook, and I have a website, katewhite.com. So please, I would love to hear from you.
Excellent.
And can you tell us the title of your new book? Not yet.
Oh, the next one that's coming out in the early June 2022 is going to be called Her Second Husband.
I love it.
I mean, no, I'm sorry. No. The Second Husband. See, I have her perfect right on my mind. It's The Second Husband.
Okay.
Titles are always tricky too. I mean, they're hard.
But your current book, just out for a month or so, is The Fiancé. So good. Don't miss it.
Right. And Hank, congratulations to you. Really great to meet you. But can I just say, Hank, congratulations on this book, on the second printing and all the fabulous buzz. Readers just absolutely adore it. The reviewers adored it, and have a great fall with this thing.
Exactly. Well, next time we'll do this in person, all right?
I would love to do this in person. And just real quick, Hank, you've got a great website to send people to. And do you like to do what's your favorite social to go on?
I'm pretty big on Facebook. I feel comfortable on Facebook. I love Twitter. It's fun. I'm always on Instagram. My website is cleverlyhankphillippyryan.com. If you go to my website and click on contact, that comes right to me with nobody in between. So I love to hear from readers that way as well.
Excellent. Ladies, have a wonderful rest of your fall till we meet in San Diego at some point in the future.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Hank.
Thank you so much for doing this. Good night, everyone.
Good night.